Hello family, enjoy this relaxing moment with AfriTales 38. Remember to subscribe and share your thoughts in the comment section and generously hit the like button because it means a lot to us. Please relax and enjoy as we dive in the story. The groom who left his bride to save his dying mother Part 2. The trial of truth. Courtroom heats up. Witnesses clash. Cassandra testifies. Gerald begins to lose ground. The courthouse in central Bellwood had never seen a crowd this large. Media vans lined the streets. Protesters held signs. Supporters and critics of both Cassandra and Gerald shouted across metal fences. Some signs read, "Justice for Cassandra's mother. Stand with Cain. Loyalty over love. Royce is innocent." Inside, the courtroom was tense. Cameras weren't allowed inside, but journalists painted every detail vividly for the world. This wasn't just a legal case, it was a public war between blood and truth, power and justice. At the center of it all sat Cassandra Royce, calm but pale, her eyes fixed ahead. Opening statements. The trial began with opening statements. Gerald's lawyer, Mr. Denton, stood first. Confident, smug. "My client is a victim," he said, gesturing to Gerald. "A father betrayed by his only child. This entire lawsuit is a product of emotional manipulation driven by Mr. Cain, who humiliated this young woman on her wedding day." Murmurs filled the room. Then Cassandra's lawyer, a sharp woman named Miss Idora Emeka, stood. "This is not a story about broken hearts," she said. "It is a story about a man who used his power to silence, deceive, and destroy. And today, the truth comes out." All eyes turned to Gerald. But the billionaire sat stiffly, unfazed. For now. Witness 1, the aunt. Cassandra's aunt, Grace, was the first witness. She looked nervous but determined. "Mrs. Royce called me a month before she died," Grace testified. She said Gerald was forcing her to sign over company shares. She was scared. She said she felt weak and confused all the time. Did she say why? She believed someone was drugging her. Gasps echoed in the courtroom. Gerald's lawyer jumped up. "Hearsay. Sustained," the judge ruled. The jury would disregard the last sentence. But the damage was done. People began to whisper. Could it be true? Witness 2, Dr. Alena. Next came Dr. Alena, the medical specialist Cassandra had visited. "I reviewed the victim's blood work," she said. "There were abnormal chemical levels consistent with long-term poisoning. Subtle, but harmful. Could this have caused her death? It's highly likely." Again, Gerald's lawyer objected. "This is speculative." But Dr. Alena held her ground. "I'm a licensed toxicologist. I've seen this before." Gerald's jaw tightened. The courtroom was slowly shifting. Witness 3, Dr. Wesley's assistant. Perhaps the most shocking testimony came from Anthony, a former assistant to Dr. Wesley, the late Mrs. Royce's doctor. "I saw Mr. Royce hand Dr. Wesley envelopes during home visits," Anthony confessed. "And I once overheard them talking about a liquid mix, something that would calm her down." "Why are you only speaking now?" the judge asked. Anthony lowered his head. "Because I was scared. But someone has to speak." By the time he stepped down, Gerald's once proud image was crumbling. He whispered to his lawyer, "Fix this." But even Denton was sweating now. Cassandra's testimony, the breaking point. Then it was Cassandra's turn. She walked to the witness stand with slow, careful steps. Everyone watched. The courtroom, the city, the country. Even Nathaniel, sitting silently in the front row. "Cassandra," her lawyer asked gently, "why are you doing this?" She took a breath. "Because I spent years believing my father was a hero," she said. "He told me he loved my mother. That her death was natural. I believed him until I saw the evidence with my own eyes." She wiped a tear away. "I don't want revenge. I want peace. But peace only comes after truth. Do you believe your father had something to do with your mother's death?" Yes, she said firmly. And what about Mr. Kane? Did he force you into this? No, she replied. He left me on our wedding day, yes. But he did it for the right reason. And when the world turned against him, he still stood beside me. A wave of silence swept through the court. Gerald shook his head, but even he looked rattled. Gerald's testimony, Emma's cracks. Finally, Gerald was called to the stand. The man who once controlled every headline now stood under oath, his pride stripped bare. Mr. Royce, the lawyer asked, did you have anything to do with your wife's death? Absolutely not. Did you ever pay Dr. Wesley for private care? That's all. Did you pressure your wife to transfer her shares? I protected my company. The courtroom murmured. Sir, please answer clearly, the judge warned. Gerald clenched his fist. Yes. I encouraged her. She was losing clarity. I had to protect what we built. The lawyer smiled slightly. So, you manipulated a sick woman to gain more power. Gerald realized what he'd just admitted. No, I didn't mean it like. Enough, the judge interrupted. The surprise witness. Just when the session was about to close for the day, a figure stepped into the courtroom from the back. It was the nurse from St. Jude's Hospital, Mrs. Bomer, the woman who held Nathaniel's mother's hand in her final hours. I need to speak, she said. The judge allowed it. I was there when Mrs. Margaret came past, she said. Nathaniel arrived in a tuxedo, crying, shaking. He didn't abandon anyone. He ran to save his mother's heart before it stopped beating. He held her until the end. And then he stayed beside her, until her body was taken. Tears filled Nathaniel's eyes. People in the courtroom wept. And in that moment, the air changed. Truth had finally found its voice. Outside the court. As Cassandra and Nathaniel left the building, reporters shouted questions. But this time, the tone was different. Cassandra, do you regret suing your father? No, she said. Not when justice is on the line. Nathaniel, do you think you and Cassandra will be together again? He looked at her. She gave a faint smile. Let's win this battle first, she said softly. Then we'll talk about love. Gerald, crumbling. Back in his estate, Gerald watched the news. Public opinion had shifted completely. The hashtags now read. Hashtag justice for Mrs. Royce. Hashtag stand with Cassandra. Hashtag Nathaniel was right. He threw his glass at the screen, shattering it. The empire he built with lies was falling. And the daughter he tried to control was the one leading the charge. After the storm. Court favors Cassandra. Gerald is arrested. Nathaniel distances himself. Love remains uncertain. The storm had passed, but the air in Bellwood still felt heavy. The trial was over. The headlines were changing. Yet, for Cassandra and Nathaniel, life had not returned to normal. Because when a storm like that ends, it doesn't leave everything the way it was. It leaves behind broken pieces. And healing takes time. The verdict. The courtroom was silent as the judge read out the verdict. After reviewing the evidence, this court finds sufficient grounds to order a full criminal investigation into the death of Mrs. Eleanor Royce and the financial practices of Mr. Gerald Royce. Gasps echoed. Furthermore, we grant a temporary injunction restricting Mr. Royce's access to Royce Media assets until further notice. Cassandra exhaled sharply. It wasn't a final victory, but it was justice beginning. And for the first time in years, she felt like her mother's voice had been heard. Gerald's arrest. The next day, police cars pulled up outside the Royce estate. Gerald stood calmly at the entrance in a dark suit, his face expressionless as officers approached. You are under arrest on suspicion of fraud, medical conspiracy, and obstruction of justice. He didn't resist. But as the cameras clicked and the public watched, he muttered to his lawyer. This isn't over. But deep inside, he knew. It was. Cassandra, a new identity. Cassandra stood in her mother's garden days later, the place she once came to escape the world. Everything was different now. She was no longer Gerard Royce's protected daughter. She was Cassandra Royce, the woman who took down her father to honor her mother's memory. The media praised her bravery. People admired her strength. Talk shows called her a symbol of truth. But she didn't feel strong. She felt tired, alone, and unsure of what came next. That night, she turned off her phone, packed a small bag, and left for the countryside. She needed to disappear. To breathe. Nathaniel, silence in the victory. Nathaniel should have felt relief. The truth had won. His name was cleared. His company's shares were rising again. But something inside him felt empty. His mansion, once filled with noise, was quiet. His days were filled with meetings, but his nights were haunted by the memory of Cassandra walking away from him after court. They hadn't spoken since the verdict. Not because they were angry, but because they were both afraid. Afraid to ask, now what? A letter in the mail. One morning, a letter arrived at Cassandra's rented cottage. No return address. Handwritten. Simple. She opened it slowly. Cass. I know we both lost a lot. You lost your father. I lost the woman I loved on what should have been our happiest day. But maybe, we found ourselves in the wreckage. I want to see you again. Not to talk about trials. Or pain. Just to smile with you. The way we used to. If you're ready, I'll be waiting at our lakeside bench this Sunday. 5 p.m. If you come, I know we still have a chance. If you don't, I'll understand. She clutched the letter, heart pounding. Sunday, the decision. Sunday arrived with warm sunlight and soft breeze. Birds chirped. The lake shimmered. Nathaniel sat on the bench alone. No security. No press. Just him. He checked his watch. 4:59 p.m. He waited. The minutes ticked. 5:01. Still alone. He lowered his head, preparing himself. Then he heard footsteps. He looked up. And there she was. Cassandra, in a simple white dress, walking slowly toward him, unsure but smiling. You came, he said softly. I didn't want to, she replied. But I couldn't stay away. They sat in silence for a moment. Then she whispered, do we still have a chance? Nathaniel looked at her with that familiar fire in his eyes. We never lost it, he said. We just paused it. A new beginning. They talked for hours. About nothing. About everything. About childhood memories, favorite movies, bad decisions, and small joys. No lawyers. No grief. No pressure. Just two souls trying to rebuild. When the sun began to set, Cassandra turned to him. I don't know where we go from here, she said. But I know I don't want to walk alone anymore. Nathaniel took her hand. Then let's walk slowly. Together. The world reacts. When news broke that Cassandra and Nathaniel had reunited, the media erupted. Love after chaos. From courtroom to connection, Kane and Royce together again. Forgiveness wins. But this time, neither of them cared what the world thought. Because now, they were finally living for themselves. Gerard, behind bars. In a quiet prison cell, Gerard Royce stared at a small screen showing photos of Cassandra and Nathaniel at the lake. He turned it off. His empire was gone. But more than that, his daughter had chosen love. And he would never control her again. The quiet rise. Cassandra finds peace. Nathaniel rebuilds quietly. They help others. Gerard's trial draws closer. 6 months passed. Bellwood had moved on to new gossip, new scandals. The media slowly stopped talking about the Royce trial. The public attention faded, and for the first time in a long time, Cassandra and Nathaniel were free, not just from headlines, but from fear. In that silence, something beautiful began to grow: peace. Cassandra, a healing purpose. Cassandra didn't return to her father's mansion. She didn't reclaim any part of Roy's media, even though the court offered her full control after Gerard's assets were frozen. Instead, she built something new, something of her own. The Eleanor Foundation. A non-profit dedicated to helping women escape toxic families, fight for justice, and find healing. She named it after her mother. And every time she walked into the small white building filled with laughter and love, she felt her mother smiling down at her. One afternoon, during a mentoring class, a teenage girl named Mimi asked her, "Do you regret it?" "Regret what?" Cassandra smiled. "Choosing love over legacy." Cassandra looked at the window and whispered, "Not for a second." Nathaniel, starting over. Nathaniel stepped down from Kinteca's CEO role a few months after the trial. The company was doing well, but he needed rest. His soul had taken too many hits. He traveled for a while: Ghana, Kenya, Cape Town, speaking to young tech minds, helping them build what he once built. No cameras. No fame. Just impact. In Cape Coast, he sat with fishermen in a village and donated equipment to help their children get internet access. One of them, an 11-year-old boy, hugged him and said, "I want to be like you." Nathaniel smiled, tears in his eyes. "No, son. Be better than me." Reconnection. Every 2 weeks, Nathaniel returned to Bellwood and met Cassandra at their favorite lakeside bench. Sometimes they said little. Sometimes they talked for hours. They were in no rush. One evening, she brought a flask of tea and said, "We've been quiet too long." "Do you miss the chaos?" he teased. "I miss the passion," she smiled. "Not the pain." He looked at her. "Do you want to build something again?" "With you?" she asked. "With the world," he replied. The partnership. Together, they started a new project. Clearlight. A media tech company built to amplify truth, expose corruption, and give honest people a voice. Nathaniel brought the tech. Cassandra brought the message. They launched quietly, without press. Within 3 months, Clearlight exposed a major money laundering ring. A small victory, but it mattered. Soon, Clearlight became a safe space for whistleblowers, journalists, and victims who wanted to speak but didn't know how. For Cassandra, it was redemption. For Nathaniel, it was a restart. For both, it was healing with purpose. Gerard's trial approaches. Back in Bellwood, the final criminal trial against Gerard Royce loomed. Investigations had taken months. New evidence had surfaced. The media prepared for another wave. But Cassandra didn't feel fear anymore. She had said what needed to be said. She had done what needed to be done. Now, justice had to take its course. "I don't need to be there," she told Nathaniel. "You sure?" She nodded. "My part is done." A quiet wedding proposal. One rainy afternoon, as they walked through the same garden where Nathaniel had once hidden from the world, he stopped suddenly. "Cass," he said, his voice soft. She turned. He pulled something from his pocket. Not a diamond. Not a ring box. Just a tiny, hand-carved wooden heart. "Let's not do the grand wedding. No cameras. No tuxedos. No drama," he said. "Just us. A tree. A vow. And the people who truly matter." Her eyes filled with tears. "After everything we've been through," she said, "this is perfect." The simple wedding. They married beneath a tree, in a small village church. Only 30 people were present: close friends, some team members, a few girls from the foundation, and Nathaniel's mentor. No photographers. No media. Just love. They wore simple white. They danced to local drums. They laughed under the stars. And when they said their vows, there were no grand promises, just quiet truths. "I vow to stay. Not just when it's easy, but when it's hard. I vow to protect, not just your name, but your peace. I vow to love you through storms, silences, and slow Sundays. When they kissed, the world didn't explode. But their hearts did. A letter from prison. 1 week later, Cassandra received a letter. From Gerald. She hesitated before opening it. Cassandra. I won't ask for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I saw your wedding photos online. One of the girls from your foundation posted them. You looked happy. Real happy. You're your mother's daughter. And I've never been prouder, and more ashamed at the same time. Live well. Dad. She read it twice. Then burned it. Not from hate. But to let go. Rising from ashes. Cassandra and Nathaniel face new challenges. Clear light rises. Gerald's fate is sealed. The morning sun rose softly over Bellwood, but it wasn't the same city anymore. Something had shifted. Not just in the news, or in the business world, but in the hearts of the people. Where once the streets had echoed with scandal and judgment, now they whispered about change. And leading that change, quietly, humbly, were Cassandra and Nathaniel. Clearlight expands. Clearlight, the company they started without noise or glamour, had grown faster than anyone expected. More than a media tech firm, it had become a movement. Young people sent in stories. Retired officials shared secrets. Victims who once hid their truth now stood boldly. Clearlight had exposed 3 corrupt politicians, helped a wrongly imprisoned woman get justice, and reunited a family torn by a false inheritance battle. They didn't make huge profits. But they made impact. And for Cassandra and Nathaniel, that was enough. Nathaniel, the past returns. One afternoon, Nathaniel received a message from a man named Jonas, the same man he had pushed outside the bar a year ago, the man whose footage Gerald once used to threaten him. I saw what you did with Clearlight. I was wrong. You didn't hurt me. I slipped after pushing you first. I've wanted to say sorry for a long time. You don't have to forgive me. Just know. I changed too. Nathaniel stared at the message for a long time. Then he replied. We both changed. That's what matters. He didn't feel angry anymore. Because real healing meant letting go of who you were, so you could walk into who you were becoming. Cassandra, the unexpected phone call. One evening, while reviewing submissions for the foundation, Cassandra's phone rang. A number she didn't recognize. She answered, unsure. Hello. Cass. The voice was weak, barely above a whisper. It was Dr. Wesley, her late mother's doctor, who had disappeared during the investigation. They're watching me, he said. But I want to talk. She sat up straight. Talk about what? Your mother. What really happened? A secret revealed. They met in a small cafe on the edge of the city. Dr. Wesley looked sickly, thin, his eyes hollow. I was paid to lie, he confessed. Your father didn't poison her directly. But he approved a drug, an experimental sedative. Said it would keep her calm. I was promised promotion. Money. Silence. And it made her worse. He nodded. It shut down her nervous system slowly. When I realized, it was too late. But I kept quiet, because I was afraid. Cassandra fought back tears. Why now? Because you gave other people courage. I thought I should have some too. A final interview. Clearlight aired one final report on Eleanor Royce's death, narrated by Cassandra herself. She didn't name her father, but she told the truth. About the pressure. The silence. The pain. And how sometimes justice isn't punishment, but a story finally told. The video reached over 5 million views in 3 days. Gerald, the final sentence. 3 months later, Gerald Royce stood before a judge for the last time. He was found guilty on 2 counts of corporate fraud and obstruction of justice. The murder charges had been dropped due to lack of direct evidence, but his career, his empire, and his name had been shattered. The sentence, 18 years in prison. He didn't cry. He didn't speak. He just looked at the courtroom empty, quiet, and knew the world had moved on without him. A baby on the way. Cassandra sat quietly on the balcony one Saturday morning, sipping tea, staring into the horizon. Nathaniel stepped out, wrapped his arms around her from behind. "You've been quiet," he whispered. She smiled. "I have something to tell you." He raised an eyebrow. She turned to face him. "I'm pregnant." Nathaniel blinked. Then smiled wide. "Really?" She nodded. "Really?" He dropped to his knees, resting his forehead on her stomach. "We're building a future, in every way." The ripple effect. In a small town in northern Nigeria, a young girl named Aisha watched Clearlight's videos on her mother's old phone. Inspired, she reported the illegal child labor happening in her school. Authorities responded. Changes happened. And a new community center was built in her town with Cassandra's foundation funding it. Clearlight had started with pain. But now, it was changing lives. Cassandra and Nathaniel, a letter to the world. For their anniversary, Cassandra and Nathaniel published a short letter on Clearlight's website. "We weren't perfect. We broke before we bloomed. We hurt, we healed. But the most beautiful thing about love is that it can rise from ashes stronger, braver, and more honest than before. To anyone who's been abandoned, doubted, or silenced, your story doesn't end in pain. It begins with truth." The world didn't need to cheer anymore. They were no longer seeking applause. They were living on purpose. The vow that changed everything. A child is born. Love deepens. Legacy redefined. Peace finally finds them both. The early morning sun poured through the window of a quiet hospital room in Bellwood. It wasn't filled with cameras. No reporters waited outside. There were no bouquets from wealthy donors or celebrity guests. Just Cassandra, Nathaniel, and the tiny life between them. Wrapped in a soft white blanket, their newborn daughter slept peacefully. Nathaniel sat beside the bed, his hand gently holding Cassandra's. "Do you remember," he whispered, "when I left you at the altar?" She chuckled softly. "How could I forget? And now look at us," he smiled. "From a ruined wedding, to this." She looked down at their daughter. It was never ruined. It was just delayed by a vow more urgent than ours. The naming. They named her Amora Eleanor Kane. Amora meaning grace. Eleanor to honor Cassandra's mother, the woman who'd given them both strength, even in death. When Nathaniel held his daughter for the first time, he cried. Not because of fear. Not even because of joy. But because, in her tiny heartbeat, he felt everything they had fought for was worth it. Homecoming. The small family returned to a quiet home outside Bellwood, no mansions, just a two-bedroom house near the forest where birds sang every morning. Clearlight still ran, now with a full team. Cassandra's foundation expanded to 3 new cities. Nathaniel resumed mentoring startups virtually. But their greatest achievement slept soundly every night in a crib by their bed. They took turns feeding her, changing her, singing her to sleep. And every now and then, in those soft moments, Cassandra would whisper, "This is the life I never knew I needed." Visitors. One evening, Larissa, Cassandra's old friend and maid of honor who stood by her during the failed wedding, came to visit. She stared at Amora with teary eyes. "I'm sorry for ever doubting you," Larissa said. "You were braver than all of us." Cassandra hugged her. "We were all hurting. But look, we made it." The letters they never sent. In a wooden box at the bottom of Nathaniel's closet sat 28 letters, one for each day after the wedding he didn't show up. He had written one each night to Cassandra. Apologies. Prayers. Love. Regret. He never sent them. One night, Cassandra found the box. She read them all. And when she finished, she placed a note inside. "You didn't need to send this. You proved them." Gerald's final message. After a year, news reached them that Gerald Royce had suffered a stroke in prison. He survived, but he was no longer the same. A small card arrived at Cassandra's doorstep. No return address, no signature. Only 6 words. She would have been proud. G. Cassandra didn't cry. She smiled. And whispered, I know. Amora's first birthday. They didn't throw a grand party. Just a small picnic with close friends, staff from the foundation, and a few village kids. Nathaniel made a chocolate cake. Cassandra read a story under the trees. Amora giggled as butterflies danced around her. Someone took a photo, Cassandra holding Amora, Nathaniel kissing Cassandra's cheek. That photo would one day hang in Clearlight headquarters. Captioned. The vow that changed everything. The true vow. Years later, in a college lecture, a student asked Cassandra, was the wedding day the biggest turning point of your life? She smiled, thoughtful. No, she replied. The wedding wasn't the moment. The real vow, the one that changed everything, was made in a hospital room. When Nathaniel chose to hold his mother's hand instead of mine. Didn't that hurt? Of course, she said. But love that doesn't bend under pressure isn't love. It's convenience. Real love passes through fire and still grows. The student nodded slowly. And the world listened. Closing reflections. Nathaniel often sat by the lake with Amora in his arms. She won't know the battles we fought, he said one evening. And that's the point, Cassandra replied. We fought them, so she won't have to. They had lost much. But they gained more. They lost fame. They lost titles. They lost a picture-perfect fairy tale. But they found truth. They found freedom. They found love, not made of diamonds or ceremonies, but of endurance, forgiveness, and choice. Final scene. The sun began to set, casting golden light across the grass. Nathaniel looked at Cassandra. What would you have done, he asked playfully, if I never came back? She smirked. I would have found you, slapped you, then married you anyway. They laughed. And beneath that sunset, holding hands, watching their daughter chase butterflies, Nathaniel whispered, I vow, again. And Cassandra replied, so do I. Thanks for watching, and please don't forget to subscribe and share.